Support for Headline Humboldt is made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, with horse racing banned and revenue down as a result, the Humboldt County Fair Board is looking for ideas at an upcoming public meeting. Also, Linnea Jackson from the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District joins us to describe the transformative infrastructure projects now underway in the valley. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. We're in the midst of graduation season here on the North Coast, with hundreds of kids walking the short distance between childhood and maturity, innocence and engagement with the wide world. It's a time of hope and trepidation. My own daughter, Sophie, is taking that step herself, the culmination of hard work over years, the overcoming of both a worldwide pandemic and a political world gone absolutely bananas. These kids represent the future. They've now seen humanity at some of its most peculiar and challenging moments, and will take this wisdom with them into professional careers and leadership positions where they could help us all master humanity's ugliest impulses. I've seen these kids up close, and despite the challenges and hardships they've faced, they have a profoundly decent and hopeful approach to living that may yet prove to be our last best hope. I hope that in the years to come, they can keep hold of that decency and remember that one's opinions and purchasing power aren't the measure of their humanity. In a moment, we'll speak with Linnea Jackson from the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District about the major projects now in motion to transform life on the reservation. But first, the news. With horse racing off the menu for the first time in generations, the Humboldt County Fair Board is asking for the public's help in filling that gap. The board will host a public town hall meeting on Monday, June 9th at 7 p.m. in the Turf Club at the Humboldt County Fairgrounds. The purpose of the meeting is to gather community input and ideas for the 2025 fair entertainment lineup, as well as future interim events and upcoming fairs. In mid-May, the California Horse Racing Board voted 4-3 to deny a request from the Humboldt County Fair Association to approve 3 weeks worth of horse racing dates for this year's fair. The decision ended a 129-year tradition of horse racing at that fair. Ryan Hudson attended a recent protest in Washington, D.C. held by Taxpayers Against Genocide to protest the ongoing assault on Gaza by Israel. She filed this report.
A class action lawsuit targeting U.S. arms sales to Israel, initially filed in Northern California against Congressman Jared Huffman and Mike Thompson, has now taken an unprecedented turn in Washington, D.C. After a San Francisco court dismissed the class action lawsuit on the basis of lacking jurisdiction, Taxpayers Against Genocide has now brought their case to the international stage with the help of allied groups opposed to Israel's military actions overseas. TAG has filed a new legal complaint with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, backed by the National Lawyers Guild, the Center for American Islamic Relations, and Doctors Against Genocide, to name a few.
And we will be pushing for what's called precautionary measures in the hopes to move the commission faster.
On Wednesday, May 14th, before marching to the headquarters of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in Washington, D.C., Taxpayers Against Genocide held a press conference to announce the filing of their complaint with the help of human rights attorney Huwaida Araf with the International Committee of the National Lawyers Guild.
But what the U.S. and Israel are telling us today is that they can deliberately starve a civilian population after mercilessly bombing them for nearly 2 years to death in a death camp, and we're not going to do anything about it, and you can't stop it. It is equivalent. It is equivalent to watching Nazis march people into those gas chambers and turning away. And turning away. And we have to realize that this is as severe. The Inter-American Human Rights System, we have an Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and we have an Inter-American Court on Human Rights. Now, the United States does not recognize the jurisdiction of the court, but it does recognize the jurisdiction of the Commission, which is headquartered right here in Washington, D.C., and it frequently defends itself against claims that it has violated its obligations under what's called the American Declaration on the Rights and Duties of Man. And so this is what this is based on, because when you support genocide, you basically violate every right that's guaranteed in the American Declaration, which the United States is held to. The first and foremost among them is the right to life. But we name about 15 different rights that the U.S. violated, and there's more. It's just every single right is violated. And it is because, I don't have to tell you, uncritical support for Israel, not just with our tax dollars, not just with the billions that we give Israel every year, and that has been escalated these past couple of years, but also by the diplomatic cover.
Dr. Nidal Jabbour, co-founder of the group Doctors Against Genocide, offered his emphatic support of the legal action.
And Doctors Against Genocide, as a medical diagnosis, it is a genocide. It has been a genocide.
The complaint asserts several arguments outlining complicity by the U.S. government in what TAG describes as Israel's genocidal military campaign. The complaint includes both the Biden and Trump administrations, as well as Congress.
There is no enforcement mechanism, right? Enforcement comes down to people. Enforcement comes down to political will. And so no matter what lawyers do and try to do, it's what the movement in the streets continue to do, and we support each other.
Reporting for Headline Humboldt, this is Ryan Hudson at Humboldt Freelance Reporting.
I sat down this week with General Manager Linnea Jackson from the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District to talk about two major infrastructure projects now in the works. One will expand broadband reach and reliability, while the other would establish a microgrid for the reservation.
My name is Linnea Jackson. I'm a member of the Hoopa Valley Tribe. Like you said, I serve as the general manager for Hoopa Public Utilities. We're a chartered entity under the Hoopa Valley Tribe, and we were established in 1982, and we serve most of the foundational utilities within our reservation. It started off as domestic water services. We manage irrigation, transfer station solid waste management. Out of COVID, we were already applying for broadband grants, but obviously that spurred the creation of the division of our communications and technology in 2020. We're also working on critical energy projects such as microgrid, small scale hydro, some of the things that we desperately need, as we also have energy resiliency issues. So that's a lot of hats to wear, and thank you for mentioning that. It's a busy position. It's a really critical functions that we serve here, and we're looking to expand and improve upon those for the benefit of our region.
Before we get into the particular projects that you're working on now, can you chart for me what the growth and evolution of the utility side of the tribe's infrastructure has been over the last 20 years? It seems like you guys have done a lot of maturing over a short amount of time. What's that journey been like, and how conscious has that been?
So I will say, we've been established for over, 43 years, and there has been a progression because we didn't start out with all of those functions. I myself has served as general manager. It will be 6 years actually on Friday, and it has gone by very quickly. There's been a steep learning curve with that. I would say it probably took a whole year to really understand the facets and the function and the ebb and flow of how that all works together. I would say that we've tried to be better with community engagement, also engagement to our elected leadership, so they understand, the grants that we're seeking, the infrastructure investments, and that's something that I'm really trying to improve upon, so the community can understand the investment in the projects that we're working on. So that's one thing I hope to achieve, because if you look at all those facets, Sometimes it might be a new water storage tank, hundreds of thousands of gallons that's providing resiliency. And if you look behind me, you can see that we're highly forested, densely forested. We're located in a tier 2, tier 3 fire threat district, just like a lot of our region. So water protection, access to critical facilities is greatly important, including the communications. So I would say over the last 4 decades, there's been a progression of the services that we provide. There was a longstanding general manager who I credit, for working here for several decades. And then obviously I've been here for 6 years, and I've really tried to step up what we can achieve. Some of that came about as right time, right place, with the pandemic, the investments of ILJA, some of those other governmental funding, and you absolutely have to seek that funding when it's available. So that's also part of the success, is having our federal government, our state government, have those resources available to apply for.
For folks who may not be as dialed in as I think a lot of my viewers are, but there are some who may not be aware, can you just sort of quickly describe how pivotal good infrastructure is to like sound economic growth and, educational futures, that kind of thing?
First, I need to step back a little bit and talk about the pandemic. So the tribe has 60 departments, and during that critical time, they shut down 30 of those departments. The schools were shut down. People were forced to work from home. The children had to have access to those online and learning platforms. And our local school district did a survey, and the metric was that only 10% of children had a good enough access to even access those platforms. They tried to give out these little hi-fi or Wi-Fi hotspots that, in dense foliage, if you're tucked behind a mountain or trees, you couldn't even access the platforms. And so we have to start with the lack of connectivity that spurred this. And just to talk about the infrastructure and how important that is, right now we are served by a wireless backhaul, and awesome enough is our tower first starts at Humboldt Hill at Keat TV. So we are that's the beginning of our backhaul. So it starts at Humboldt Hill, it traverses to a second tower at Neyland, and then Horse Mountain. If you've ever been up to Horse Mountain, it's pretty crammed up there. And so there's lack of frequency, there's lack of tower space. So that also creates kind of a bottleneck in the availability of the amount of speeds we can get and the amount of resiliency. So it's Humboldt Hill, Neyland, Horse Mountain, and then we've built a communications tower on Sugar Pine, which is the first tribally built tower in Hoopa besides Bald Hill. And so now we have another access point and then 3 distribution towers. So just to get internet into the valley takes a 7-tower hop. Depending on, and if there's anything to deal with power, let's say the power went out, generator didn't kick on, there's lack of connectivity. If the wind is too high or the rain, it messes up those frequencies as well. So there's a number of things that can happen with wireless connectivity. And that brings us to the fiber optic projects that we are applying for. We received an NTIA grant for tribal broadband connectivity. That was an investment of a little over $65 million. We are building out fiber to the home. We're building 2 communication towers, a data center. I just hop off a meeting with that, and construction will start on that in the coming weeks. Workforce development, and some other initiatives. We're able to train our staffs, get Class A drivers, purchase equipment that we need and supplies. So that's one major project that came about that will provide the last mile connectivity. The second one that you got the press release for, the Hoopa Valley Tribe under Hoopa Public Utilities received the first joint build agreement with California Department of Technology to build 23 miles of middle mile open access network. And that will start at the beginning of 299 and 96 all the way to the Hoopa-Yurok border along State Highway 96. And that is a critical portion and ring of resiliency Then it'll pass off to the Yurok tribe, the Karuk tribe, Siskiyou, and then we'll be able to create a whole entire ring from 96 to I-5 and back down. So if there's any other resiliencies or rock slides or fires that happen, any of the number of things that can happen in our region, we'll have multiple routes of diversity. And then there's a CPUC LADA grant where we actually received design and environmental funding for Willow Creek. And so we're looking to build out regionally within our Aboriginal territory as well, not only for sustainability, but to provide connectivity for our entire region.
What does that physical work actually look like? I mean, are they basically burying fiber optic lines along the roadbed, along the highway, kind of like they did with 101 years ago?
Absolutely. And similar to Digital 299, if you're familiar with that project.
Yeah, sure.
So that was originally Inyo Networks, and we're going back probably a decade. And then that was picked up by Vero, and they built the infrastructure, underground fiber optic cable from Eureka all the way to Cottonwood. Our project will connect with that and have regional resiliency as well through that. So it took the longest part of this project is always the environmental cultural resource impact studies, sign off from, U.S. Forest Service and Caltrans and all of the project partners is probably the bulk of the work that it takes for the design to even start to kick off. And so this will be an underground build with various conduits, vaults, splice boxes along the right-of-way, the Caltrans. We're staying within the 96 corridor. And if you've ever driven 96, you might have a rock face on one side and a 200-foot drop to the river.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room there.
There's not a lot of room there.
Yeah.
And so it makes those little pull-out areas very critical because that's where we're going to have the splice boxes. We need enough room to be able to manage and access our network in case we need to make any modifications or changes. So it's from a geologic and topography issue, it's a very challenging build. We issued our RFP and we've selected our contractor who is Glassroots Construction. They actually also did 299. So
they're familiar with the area, and I mean that's something that they might be prepared for now because of that, right? I mean,
exactly. Hopefully they worked out all of the kinks, with that project. But then they have access to the type of rock we have here, those space configurations, and kind of the regional feel, if you will. So we're very excited about that partnership.
How difficult is it to get it to the individual homes from that point? Is that that much more complicated, or am I missing some physics there that makes it a lot easier?
So what the middle mile access does, it allows that major backbone to come through the valley, right? And then we can have splice boxes and spur off of that to serve the last mile homes. We're having to make design considerations in some areas. If you look at the valley floor, some of it was always ancient riverbed. So there's a lot of rock and cobble. And so some of the home locations, because there's already existing poles, we might do like an aerial drop to that home. Some might be underground, depending on soil topography. All of that takes is it's not just the construction, it's also the business and marketing, making sure people understand the services that we're offering, being able to have that business acumen also follow the construction mechanisms. And that's also been a heart because we're also having to facilitate a huge project and also up our business game. So as a young tribal provider, yes, we've served utility functions for over 40 years. This is a new branch, and we're constantly learning how to effectively manage that as well. But we're trying to engage with our community, provide updates so they know construction timelines, offer them obviously the investment of having free fiber optics to their home, whether they take that service or not. I think that that's what our goal is to have them agree for that to be installed if and when they want to take our service.
Yeah. How do you keep it from being prohibitively expensive with such a small number of residents? Is that part of what the grant funding allows, or, I mean, is that going to be an issue, do you think?
You're hitting the nail on the head there, because the whole idea is for for it to be sustainable. Without the grant funding, without the middle mile portion, without the last mile portion through NTIA, and without grants from the CPUC where they allow things to be developed like business plans and pro formas. If we did not have the grant funding, we probably would not be able to ever achieve this. So having the investment is going to really allow that connectivity for the last mile. And part of that is exactly why we're looking into Willow Creek, and we're looking into other wages. We just submitted an application yesterday for CPUC's FFA application, so we can also spur some of the smaller towns locally along 299. That all comes back to the business pro forma of how many customers do we need to make this sustainable, to be able to cover wages and maintenance agreements and all of those fees that come with that. And so we have to always be looking towards how are we going to maintain this. Part of the agreement with CDT for the middle mile is for us to maintain it for the next 20 years. So there'll be recurring revenue as with that as well. There's not a lot of local fiber providers, and we know our territory, we're the incumbent tribal nation. And so it really is a true partnership. So we are making sure that our staff is trained, that they have the ability. NTIA has to be completed by 7/31 of 26, and the middle mile has to be completed by 12 of 26. So over the next year and a half, they are going to be completely invested in learning how to install, learning, traffic control plans, and all those mechanisms that it takes for a successful construction, so we can carry that forward to maintain that.
One of the other things I wanted to ask you about was the Tribal Energy Resilience and Sovereignty Project, Terrace, where you guys are going to be, I guess, sort of developing like a microgrid among the various different tribal entities. Is that right?
That's right. Terrace is an ambitious project. The lead applicant is Redwood Coast Energy Authority. It's in partnership with Shots Energy Research Center and 4 tribes, which is Blue Lake, Hoopa, Yurok, Kaluk. And the 3 of us are located off of the Hoopa 1101 circuit, which in PG&E's reliability report is one of the top worst performing circuits in their region. There's many reasons for that. It's the dense foliage that's, snapping the lines. It's potential wildfire. It's, PSPS and EPSS events that happen. But we struggle with energy resiliency here. So that project is developed as, obviously Blue Lake already has a successful microgrid, which they're upgrading.
Under kind of a model for, they're doing wonderful work over there, really innovative stuff. So it's exciting to see them kind of fold in other partners, it seems like, right?
Absolutely. They're building a training center, and they're actually agreeing to kind of be a test bed and a research hub, for the infrastructure that will happen within our circuit. Just one thing about the Terrace project is with the change in administration, there has been some delays with actually having that funded. Prior to the change, we had a conditional award that was issued, and we've been really doing our best to jump through every hurdle, the data requests they've had, the waiting period, the legal responses that are required, so we can secure that. So we're still waiting on the DOE award, but it's just one part of the entire portfolio. Terrace itself, I mentioned all the project partners, but it's about a $220 million project. So the DOE award itself is a little over 87 million, but we had to come up with a 1-to-1 non-federal match for that. So if you think about collectively raising an additional almost 100 million of non-federal funds, was a feat in itself. And so between all the project partners, we are awardees of the PG&E Community Microgrid Incentive Program. We're working with the California Energy Commission. There's some philanthropic dollars in there. We're counting on those tax credits that are also kind of under the gun with the administration. But we absolutely need kind of all the stars aligned for this to happen, and we're doing absolutely everything in our power to have this. So there would be nested microgrids. The PG&E substation is actually located in Hoopa, but it serves the downriver Yurok as well as the Karuk tribe. And so we are reliant on that infrastructure. So we will have nested microgrids. In a case of any other emergency or outages, we'd all have the ability to offset each other or island individually. And so it's a really ambitious project. And if you think about it, it also is going to pair with our fiber optics, because we're going to have a seamless line of fiber optics that's being brought about with each tribe. But because of the federal funding of those awards, we couldn't even use that as match, even though the fiber optic project is going to be serving the microgrid, for data transmission and remote monitoring and collection. So it's really frustrating when projects cannot pair each other.
Has the administration come out and said anything about opposing those funds, or has it just been kind of a hiccup because of, where do you guys think you stand with the administration at this point? Do you have any idea? I know that they don't communicate necessarily a lot of the time.
So, I'm an optimist by nature. We had to change some language about community benefits. There's some things where tribes were considered, even though RCEA is the lead applicant, obviously it serves 4 tribal nations as well. And they want to wrap us into the whole DEI thing, which is, not where we land. We're sovereign nations.
Yeah.
So the things like community benefits that was actually required to have to develop that plan, we kind of had to do some modifications and rewrite that. But I think that we are really strong as a team. We've gone through the programmatic review, and actually DOE GRIP did say that they're supportive of our project, that we meet the goals of what that funding is for. So they recommended us to go to the next level. And I think we are in that last data collection response period, and hopefully the last hurdle to where we can secure those funds by the fall of 25. That is the ultimate goal. And we're also finalizing our PG&E CMIP, working with CEC, and trying to overcome some of those hurdles with the shortfall in funding. Tax credits are not my expertise, but we have some strong consultants that do that understand, the IRS law and all of the bills that are passed. And I really hope that those initiatives and benefits will still be available to us so that we can secure those resources.
That's pretty much all I had for you, but that is an amazing amount of work in progress that you guys have made in a short amount of time and up against a lot of challenges. So congratulations on all that hard work, and hopefully that funding on that last part will come through. But even if not, it sounds like the infrastructure for the the web, high-speed internet is a go no matter what. So congratulations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and for reaching out. It's really important to be supportive of tribal nations. And, I love Humboldt. It's where I was born, where I'm from, and I'm sure you feel the same. So thank you so much for the invite.
That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Remember to stay tuned and stay informed.